So, welcome to the first episode of the Faithful Legacy podcast. I am super excited to be here. The podcast has been a long time in the coming, and we are officially filming. It is late at night because our kids are asleep, which is pretty much the only time we could do
Yes.
anything like this. The Faithful Legacy podcast, our heart behind this is that we want to equip and empower you to build a legacy rooted in Jesus. And we have so many passionate thoughts and experiences behind this. And we just want to share that with all of you and give all the glory back to Jesus. So, with that, I'm going to introduce my wonderful husband. I should probably introduce me first, right? I'm Emily, and this is my wonderful husband, Benny. And what do you think about our first podcast episode?
I'm super excited. So this is a new endeavor for us, and like she said, we've talked about this for a long time. We there for a little while, way back when there was COVID, we filmed our family and made short, funny videos,
That's
and we
right.
kind of started there. But we wanted something better. We didn't just want to be funny content creators. We
Yeah.
wanted to do something meaningful and purposeful with our lives.
Also, God has like drastically changed us from that era of our life to this era of our
So if you
life.
find our other YouTube channel, you can laugh, but don't cast judgment. All right.
And praise God for sanctification because He is a good, good God. I
That's
love
right.
that. We were just talking before we turned the camera on about how it feels really funny to sit in your own home on a couch looking at a phone and being like nervous to push play. It's like what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
So, anyways, well, before we get into the podcast topic of the day, we want to tell you a little bit about who we are, so that we're not just like random faces and you have no context. So, I
Yeah.
take the lead on that one.
Yeah. I own and operate my own electrical company. I've always wanted to be an electrician since I was knee high
Or retired.
or retired. My grandpa was a retired man, he said. And I thought that sounded pretty great. So I always wanted to be an electrician. I worked all the way up. I started my first electrical job at 18. I became a journeyman electrician about 5 years later. Became a master electrician after that, a year after that. And then we opened up our own shop.
Yeah.
We jumped off the cliff, and now we're looking at closing it down.
But we have to go back, okay? Because also,
I'm a terrible, terrible storyteller in
no,
that I skip all of the awesome details.
no, that's okay. I was going to talk about like when we met, okay?
Oh,
Because we met in high school. We were high school sweethearts,
yes.
and we got married at 19 and just like a week shy
Two
of
weeks before I
21.
turned 21.
That's right. And we have 7 beautiful children.
Yep.
And you know what my favorite thing is when people are like, "Hey, you have such a great family. Like, there's so many kids here. Like, tell me how old they are." So I'm gonna let you take the
Ha!
wheel because I love when you answer how old they are because you pause at each kid. And you're like, "They're this old now, right?"
Okay.
Like,
Do you want me to say their
yeah,
names?
yeah. You can
Okay.
say their first name and then
Okay.
their age.
Our oldest daughter, Addie, is 11.
Mhm.
Dawson is 9. Gracie is 7.
Yep. Look at
Awesome.
you go. She's almost
Jackson
8.
is 6. Vinny is Vinny is 4. Tater is 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, until March. And then Hannah is a year and
Look at you go.
a half.
It's so hard, in fairness to
And
you,
most of
though.
the time, when someone asks us that, she goes, "What's their birthday?" to me. Just watches me sit there, afraid.
Yeah, that's true. That's good life advice, I feel like. Ladies, let your husband sweat out when your kids' birthdays
The
are and
worst part
love it.
is they don't know what their birthday
They
is
don't know.
anyways.
You could say any date and the people would be like, cool. As long as it's a reasonable age. Our baby can be like, they're not gonna be like 11, but if your kid's like 6 or 10 months, I don't know, any
Yeah.
of those would be fine. That's so great. So where were we at in that? We just kind of went.
High school sweethearts.
Yeah,
We have 11 kids. We
7 kids.
we have 7 kids. Our oldest is 11.
There you go.
That's what I
There
meant to
you
say.
go. And we have lived a wild ride. The Lord just took 2 broken sinners and changed us into radical Christ followers, and that
Some
was
of us more drastically than others.
and it wasn't an overnight thing. And I just have to say, walking with Jesus is the most incredible,
Hmm.
wonderful thing I've ever done in my entire life. And it is a wild ride. It is a hard ride. It's a continual daily surrender to Jesus. And Jesus even says in Luke 9:23, it says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself daily, take up his cross and follow me." And to follow Jesus really is this daily surrender, this daily commitment. Like, God, I'm going to choose your will over mine, no matter what that cost is. And God has just taught me that over and over again as we have walked with Him. And so this kind of just leads into, when we were first having kids, so our oldest is adopted, and God really just walked us through this radical change in our lives of
Yep.
surrender unto His will. And that's really when this fire inside of me ignited of like, okay, I don't want to do life without Jesus because like
Yep.
this is hard. And so I like to think like God took these two broke kids and we became saved and sanctified. Now I can say we're firmly rooted. And obviously, sanctification is an ongoing process, but like
Absolutely.
God has pruned so many things out of off of my life and off of
Hmm.
your life. And, I just can't believe what God has done in our lives and where we are today in that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. When we first were looking into adopting her, we weren't even old enough to do foster care. They
yeah,
were
I
they were
was,
like, there is no way we're handing a 1 year old baby to a couple of just out of high school kids.
yeah, I was 18 and you were 20 or
20,
21.
20, 19 or 20.
Yeah. And so in Iowa, which is where we live right now, you have to be 18 to adopt so that siblings can adopt their siblings out of
Hmm.
foster care. And then you have to be 21 or older to foster. And
Yep.
so it just really was an act of God. And that will be probably a podcast at some point, just
Definitely.
talking about that testimony. In fact, I remember in the adoption process, I was just like, Lord, I know someday I'm going to be given an opportunity to tell this testimony and I'm going to be faithful in it. And
Hmm.
so I'm excited to share that, which wasn't even the topic of today's
No,
episode.
not a bit.
Mostly we want you guys to get to know who we are and our hearts behind what we want to
Yep.
do. We do have a pretty exciting and big testimony to share for
Yep.
today.
Do you
So,
want to go into that, or do you want to talk about like what we want to do on the podcast?
yeah, we can do that. So, go ahead. Like this podcast, we want to talk about like what you can expect coming forward. Like, what is the Faithful Legacy podcast all about?
So we're talking about everything in building a new legacy. And so that's what our family is doing. We are building a new legacy on Christ. And so it's going to look like things like how to parent kids in a Christ like way. It's going to look into how to handle your finances. It's going to look like going to church, what it looks like to practice Christianity in a daily life.
Yeah, totally. Because I think the thing is that as we grow up and we start being like, okay, what does it look like to live for Jesus in all aspects? Is Jesus just isn't part of your life on
Mm-mm.
Sunday or on Wednesday nights when you have service. It's not when you have Bible study, and those are all great things. Keep doing all the great things. But the thing is that Jesus wants every aspect of your life. So he wants to be in your finances. He wants to be in your parenting. He wants to be in your friendships and your relationships, what you watch on television. Like
Mm.
he wants to be in every single aspect, and learning in our own lives what that has looked like, what that kind of surrender and dedication to Jesus looks like, has been a long process.
Yes,
And I can say with confidence that every single sacrifice has been all for God's glory and honestly our benefit. Like it's been a wild ride.
it really has.
Yeah. So Michigan.
Okay. All I've ever wanted to be is an electrician.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point where we're going to close down the electrical company that I worked all of my life to start and follow after what God's called us to do.
Yeah. So a little backstory in that. So you've owned your electrical company for about 6 years, and we live here in Iowa in the Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
and we homeschool our kids, and I stay at home with them. And in the past year and a half, we actually owned and operated a Christian bookstore called
Yep.
Glorify. And that was totally like God inspiring us to do that. We really, really felt called to do this. We opened up this Christian bookstore, and the Christian bookstore front was seriously just to like keep the lights on, which fun fact, it pretty much never
It
did. We just
didn't. It
invested
didn't.
it.
Yep.
But it was the biggest blessing because our heart behind it was that we wanted people who never felt comfortable to set foot in a church to feel like they had a place to go, to have a coffee and read a devotional or sit with a friend and chat or come pick out a Bible, or just like we wanted people to feel like they were home in a
And we,
place where God was so present. And this place was incredible. It so strengthened my relationship with God and really just gave me the confidence like, hey, I can talk to people about Jesus in any setting, and people are so hungry for
Hmm.
truth. And we had people come in here and pour out their life stories. And we had the
Yeah.
opportunity to pray over and minister to and share the gospel with so many people at Glorify. It was like the biggest blessing.
Yeah, we had a lot of people come through there that we never would have met
Yeah.
otherwise. And we got to see people from other churches, which is kind of strange because usually you just see the people from your church on
Yeah.
Sunday. We got to see 4 or 5 different churches at
Yeah.
least,
Yeah. Which was really great. Just
which
connect with other
yeah,
people. And we also got to hold a bunch of different, like, I shouldn't say a bunch, we are only there a year and a half. We got to hold different groups in
yep.
there, and just delve into who God is, and why you should give your life to him.
And we
And
found a lot of cool Bibles in the
we
process.
did. There was so much inventory in there. We're like, we want it on our shelves. So
Yep.
that was really neat to pick out. We also held a couple kids Bible classes that were free to the community. So just a really great experience. So all that to say, excuse me, we've been feeling really rooted, right? Like we've
Hmm.
lived in Iowa our entire lives. Two kids from Iowa have hardly ever been out of the state.
We've only ever lived 45 minutes from where we grew up.
Yeah, and both of our families are here,
Yep.
and it's just been such a sweet spot. Our home church that we've gone to now for over 12 years, maybe going 13, 15, I don't know. Our church family I mean, they're
Yeah. And we've
and
grown a lot of relationships and mm, built a community and a family in our church, which
yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah. And I can just truly say, like, I have ample people in my life that if we, like, our roof caved in or something, it's like, I have so many people that God has put in our life that I could call and they would be like, I will be there in an instant. And
Yep.
like, we have so many people we can count on. So to say that when God called us to Michigan, which I can't remember if he said that or not yet,
Yeah, you did.
um, it was such a radical change, and the way God called us there was so radical. But I wanted you to have this baseline understanding of, like, this home, this place God has given us has been such an incredible blessing.
Hmm.
And we just love our church family. We
Yep.
love, and so leaving all of this is hard, but I've never regretted a yes to God ever.
Nope.
So we want to tell you about the testimony to Michigan because it it's jaw dropping.
And it really starts with you. I mean, you were called there first.
Yeah. So I'll give a short story of how I was called there because we could probably go on about Michigan for a long time. But in February of 2024, we went to Florida for the first time in our lives.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun
Actually, because of our Christian bookstore, Glorify, there was a Christian product expo. And so we were going to go down there and look at all those materials.
because it was in Florida in February.
So we packed up all seven of our kids. We drove our passenger van to Florida. Awesome. We
We had a
love traveling.
blast.
We love going with our kids places. It was awesome. And we went down there to check out all these products. And for a few months prior to that, I just felt like I was seeing Michigan everywhere, almost to like an obnoxious state. And it
Hmm.
was like, there's 50 states out there. Why am I not seeing some, like, California or Texas, like one of the states that you feel
Yep.
like comes up more often? And so I was just kind of like, am I overthinking this? And leading up to going to the conference in February, it was like wild. I just felt like I couldn't get away from it. Like, I'd be talking to a stranger in Walmart,
Yep.
and we could be talking about anything like peanut butter, and they'd be like, oh yeah, also my parents are visiting from Michigan. It would be so random. And I mean, it was coming up everywhere. So
Yeah, and you
anyways,
looked at me and you're like, "Do you feel it?" I'm like, "Nope."
right. So I'm like, okay, it must not be, something we're supposed to do. I don't know, maybe there's something there. So we go to this conference for the Christian Product Expo. And while we're down there, we're getting all these products, we're learning all these great things, making all these great connections. And you get to meet authors down there for these Christian books, which is just fabulous. And I'm talking to this woman, and she wrote this book on postpartum, and it was incredible. Has nothing to do with Michigan, by the way. And just in the middle of our conversation, she was like, oh, by the way, I go to this Christian speakers conference in Michigan. And it was funny because on the way to Florida, it was ramping up like crazy, like just Michigan, Michigan, Michigan. I'm like, Benny, what is this? Why is Michigan everywhere? Like, why is God calling us to this? So I'm talking to this woman, and she's like, I go to the speaking conference in Michigan. And the Lord has put in my heart a long time that I have some calling to speak,
Hmm.
into whatever capacity that would be, but I don't have a lot of experience on like how to actually put that together.
Not yet.
And so I was like, as soon as she said that, I just knew. I was like, okay, this is like a thing. And she goes, oh, and the like one of the directors for this conference, which is like the Christian speakers conference in the country, is right over here. Let me introduce her
Hmm.
to you. So I go introduce myself to her, and it's great. They give me all the information for this conference, and we finish up our conference in Florida. Come home, I have this little note about the Michigan conference, and I
Yep.
was like, okay, we'll talk about it at home. And fun fact: the conference cost is $700 a ticket, so you need to be committed to go to this conference.
And we don't do anything separate, and
Yeah,
so it's 3 days, two
yeah.
all day long event
Yeah,
things.
something like that. So we were all going to get packed up to go. It's obviously going to be another investment. And so when we got home, I was like researching this conference and looking at hotel stays and trying to figure out how our whole family could go to this because we're just a together family. And I'm in the middle of trying to, like talking to my husband. I'm like, should we go to this? This is how much it's going to cost. This is going to be an investment. And I'm literally looking at the accommodations and I'm like, should we book this? And I get this little like bloop message on Facebook, and it was amazing because I get this message from a woman that I knew years ago. And she was like, hey, Emily, would you be the speaker at our women's conference in October? And it was at the precise moment I'm sitting here
Yep.
looking at these accommodations. And I was like, okay, Lord, I get it. You really want me to go.
Yep.
And at the same time, kind of chuckling, like, you've been kind of talking to me about Michigan, God, for like months. And it was just for this conference. Like, okay, conference is amazing, mind blowing. I feel like I got so many skills from that, and I was so impressed by their attitude of prayer and worship
Hmm.
and service to God, and just really great. So anyways, after going to Michigan, I felt like the Michigan thing kind of like died off for a while.
Hmm.
Didn't feel like I was hearing it as much, and I was like, okay, I did the Michigan thing, awesome. And side note, we loved it in
Oh, it was a
Michigan. It was
blast.
great, beautiful, great people. It was really great. So, um, side note, I am like really cold. Are you cold?
Mm-mm.
I am really cold. Can I have a blanket?
Yeah.
I feel like I like can't concentrate because my hands and feet are so cold. Okay. Whoop. Minor interruption. So after that kind of dies off for a little bit, a couple of months, I'd say, it kind of starts. I just am starting to see it again. And this whole time, I'm not feeling like Benny is necessarily feeling the same calling. So
Not a
I'm like,
bit.
okay, maybe I'm overthinking this. And in my head, I'm like, am I just looking for Michigan? But I mean, it'd be everywhere. It's like I would be at my parents' house, they'd be watching football, and I know nothing about football whatsoever. And I'd look up and be like, "Who's playing?" Michigan State. And I love to purchase dresses from this one company, and I like to look at the new dresses they have out, and they pair tops with it. And this one woman's wearing a top with a dress, and it's Michigan. And podcaster I like to listen to. What are they wearing? Michigan sweatshirt. And it wouldn't just be that; it'd be in conversation again. It's like strangers that have people coming up and just like talking to me about Michigan and their family from Michigan, and I'm just like, what is going on?
Hmm.
So at the same time, Glorify's building we just rented, the landlord had it up for sale for about a year. And we knew that at
Yep.
some point it was going to sell and we were going to
Hmm.
have to move Glorify. And we just been praying a lot, like, Lord, would you just open the doors for that place to go?
Yep. And we
And
looked and looked and
we
looked for a
looked.
building,
We really did. And anything we could find was three times our rent minimum.
which it never covered its rent anyway. So,
We were investing full
yep.
time. We were investing in the kingdom. So that was
Yep.
good.
That's right.
So I lost my train of thought when you said
Oh,
that. So,
where were you?
anyways, so Glorify's building was up for sale. At this very same time, we got word that there was going to be a building built across the street from our home that was going to have a bunch of chemical emissions. And it's like directly across the street from our home. And so there'd be a lot
Yeah.
of pollutants. And we already were planning to move, but just assumed it was going to be locally, just.
Yep.
And so we knew that our house was going to be up for sale, but thought we would just move in this local area. And at the same time, for several months, you had been feeling like God was calling you to full time ministry to
Something
some
greater.
degree, and that you were supposed to let your employee go. Do you want to speak to
Yeah. So I had
that?
an apprentice for, actually, I've had apprentices for like 3 years now.
Yeah.
This is my second apprentice, and great kid, real nice kid, comes from a great family. But I just felt like I was supposed to release him to go work at another electrical shop and supposed to do something different. But I held on to him for at least 4 to 5 months longer than I probably should have if I would have really listened to God. And I held on to him because, in my worldly eyes, I couldn't grow an electrical business and let employees go. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so it kind of came to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to trust God, and I let him go. He has a new job. He loves it. It's great.
Yeah.
Working out better for both of us.
Yeah. So at this point, we knew our house was going to be up for sale. Just hadn't really figured out when that was going to be.
Hmm.
And you were having this feeling about your employee,
Yep.
and then Glorify had been up for sale for a long time. So sometime in November, I had taken a week just on my own to just pray and be more intentional with God. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, God, I want more intimacy with you. I want to know you more deeply. I want to know what your will is over our life. Our house is going to be up for sale. Glorify, we're going to have to like do something with this soon.
Yep.
We're getting to the end of the year. What do you want us to do? So we're a few days into this like prayer week for me, and I get a message that Glorify is sold. And I just felt so prepared. I was just like, God, you prepared me for this news this week. And I
Hmm.
felt called to take this intentional time with you this week.
Yep.
And once we realized Glorify had sold, we were like, okay, we got like 6 weeks to the end of the year when we got to be out. So we either have to find a new place, or we have to say, hey, sorry, community, we're like taking a hiatus, or we have to close it down.
Yep.
So we decided the following week, we're going to take this entire week to be intentionally dedicated in prayer on these specific things. Because I think like the week or two before that, you had said, come to me, and you were like, the Lord has really been calling me to let go of my employee for this
Hmm.
long. And I'm finally ready to do it. Like he's been pushing me, and I'm ready to say
Yep.
yes. And I remember saying to you, I feel like this is the thing that God has been waiting for you to be obedient on, for him to give you the next thing to be faithful with.
Yeah.
And it was like as soon as you said yes to that, like the floodgates opened of
Yep.
like God being like, yes, you were obedient. So here's what's happening. Here's
Hmm.
what's going to happen. So we took this week to pray, and we just felt so much peace that God was like, it's time for Glorify to close.
Yeah.
And the community was so sweet because they were like, oh, we're so sad you're closing. Like, how are you doing about it? And we were like, honestly, great. Because, like,
They're
when
like,
you,
what?
because they're like, you've been open a year and a half. But it's like when you have a peace from the Lord that this is what he's calling to do, like it's really easy to walk without
Yeah.
regrets. It's like we did what God asked us to do here,
Absolutely.
and now we're going to do the next thing.
Yep.
And so we had, like, when we were still praying about that piece, we are like looking for buildings again, all the same stuff still for sale, still all 3 times our rent, like nothing new is open or available or fit the size. And it just kept confirming, like, it's time to close, it's time to
Yep.
close. So we decided that week, like, it was going to close at the end of the year, and you had just let the employee go. And so we're praying
Or,
about, like, what are we going to do now? You've now let the employee
yep.
go. What happens next? Did you have something you
We
were
were
saying?
looking for a house. We couldn't find one in our price
Yes.
range, and
Or that fit or
or fit
whatever
our
it was.
family or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked for a long time. We couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
If it fit our family, it was way outside our budget, or it was way too small of a yard for the dogs that we have,
Yeah.
or for whatever reason, didn't have a dining room table, and we eat around a dining room
We
table.
do, we do. So our big prayer that week, because at this point you started seeing
Seeing Michigan a little
Michigan.
bit, yep.
And I
We
remember like asking you for several months, like, hey, is this anything like you feel called to, or is this just me? And for a long time you'd be like, yeah, I just feel like yeah, I'm not really getting it. And then for like a couple of weeks before this, I remember you being like,
I
yeah, it
see it.
really is everywhere.
Yep.
And like you're having conversations, and maybe you have conversations. I was having conversations with people about it. So this week we prayed a specific prayer. We said, God, if you want us to go to Michigan, we love our friends, we love our family, we love our church, we love the ministry we're
Yep.
involved in. We both lead. He leads a men's group, I lead a women's group at our church. And we're like, if you want us to go, we need you to be obnoxiously clear, because we don't want to leave something that you've said is good if that's not what you want
Yep.
us to do. But Michigan is everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And so we started this on like a Sunday. And so we go to church that morning, and we'd been kind of thinking about Michigan, for the last
Hmm.
little while. And, so we go to church that Sunday, and I can't exactly remember everything our pastor said that day, but I know he was preaching.
Well, that Sunday Hannah was fussy, so I was out in the multi-purpose room, and you got to sit in the service.
Yeah, that's right. Hannah's our youngest. She's one.
Yep.
So we're sitting in service, and I know at one point he was preaching about Philip and just talking about like this call he had in his life to go out and tell other people about Jesus. And um, it's just like building this fire and passion inside of me. I'm like, that's what I'm called to do. That's what I'm called to do. I'm called to share the gospel, and I'm super invested in the
Yep.
service. And he's just talking about, I want to say he also talked about Abraham and how God called him from his homeland and
Mm.
everything he knew to go out and do, this
Yep.
new thing, and his faithfulness in that. And then our pastor went on to talk about when he and his wife left the state they used to live in and minister in for years, and how they were called to Iowa, to where
Mm-hmm.
we are now. And he said this, he goes, we loved our family, we loved our friends, we loved our church family. And so we're like, God, we have to know that we know that we know that this is what you're calling us to do. And so at this point, I'm like about ready to jump out of my seat. I'm like, I need to know. I got to go tell my husband about this. What's going on? And so I go out of the church service. I find you, and I'm like 10 feet away. And you're like,
Are you paying attention? Did you hear what he
yeah.
just said?
Did you hear what he just said? And I mean, both of us at the end of this service just had like this fire in our bellies, like, oh my goodness, he might be calling us to Michigan,
Yeah.
right? It was just like that service was
Yep.
just, have you ever sat in service and you just felt like the pastor wrote the message for
Right
you?
for us.
And that was just totally that Sunday for us. So then after service, we like to stay and visit. We're usually like closing down the service,
Yeah, we're
it's
there
like
a
the
while
doors are
after.
locked, and we're heading out. And so we're visiting with a bunch of friends this particular day. We're talking to all kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
And after we talk to them for a while, their conversations are kind of splitting off and talking to other people. And you and I are connecting. And you're sitting in a chair in front of me, and I'm sitting, behind, but we're turning our face to each other. And we're talking kind of low because, nobody around
Nobody
us knows
knows.
that we're
We're
thinking
talking about
about.
the sermon and
Yeah. And
everything.
oh my goodness, what do you think about this? And you looked at me and you were like, I think God could be calling us to Michigan. Like, we
Mm.
need to be so intentional this
Yep.
week in prayer. And I haven't been hearing anything anyone was saying next to us. And literally, the person right here talking to someone, all I hear them go is, I went to Michigan State. Like, of
Yeah.
all the things I could have said in that moment, so that was all I got.
Yeah.
And that was really like the kickstart
Yep.
to the radical week.
And then there was a guy that was supposed to come to my men's group for a couple of months, and he was going to talk to us about hopefully getting a volunteer for an alternatives pregnancy center here in our hometown.
Which is the Christian alternative to a Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So it provides,
Not all not all alternatives pregnancy centers are Christian based, he said,
gotcha.
but these ones are around here.
Yeah, so it gives like the free ultrasounds
Free
and
ultrasounds.
STD tests, and
Yep.
helps moms and dads and babies
Who
for the
are
first year after
experiencing
life.
who are experiencing unplanned pregnancies, or even just young couples that need some assistance with diapers and wipes and
Yeah.
all of that. And so he finally comes in the middle of this week, and he goes, "Hi, my name is Mike. I'm from Battle Creek, Michigan."
Meanwhile, the whole week we're like, Lord, if it's Michigan, be so clear. And we told nobody that we
Nobody.
were doing this.
Yeah.
Nobody at all.
And so that took me back, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's crazy." And then he talked more and more about the center, and none of the guys in my group, I had about 11 guys there that night. No one's interested in being a volunteer.
Did you say what the volunteer position was for? Like for the male position?
Yeah, so it was a male advocate. So when a couple comes in, a gal from the pregnancy center will come alongside the mom of the baby and talk with her and just kind of guide her in what baby development stages and things like that, and being a good mom. And then they try to have a male advocate come alongside the man to do the same thing, to be
Yeah.
a good father, to for development stages and all of those things. And I came home and I told Emily that I felt like I was called to do this until we left, but I feel like I'm called to do it full time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember that night you were saying, like, I feel like I might be called to do this in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have been passionate about many things in your life, but I've never seen you so passionate about something
Mm-hmm.
ever. And at this point, I was just willing to let you, like, volunteer 100 hours because I mean, you were just so full of the spirit
Yeah, I
at
didn't
this
know I
time.
was so passionate about
Yeah.
about it.
You're coming home and you're telling me about it, and I'm like, thinking this program's amazing, but you were so motivated to go fill this position. You're like, this is who I'm called to be. This is
Yeah.
what God's calling me to do. Ever since you became a believer, I know like a deep part of you has been like, I am called to help walk alongside men and bring them up to be the men God's called them to be. And so when this position opened, I just feel like that fulfilled a lot of things that you had felt called to do in the beginning.
Gonski Electric runs through suppliers. And so I buy parts from a supplier, and then after a job gets finished, I can pay the supplier. And we got behind in our payments just through life and taking our eyes off of the business and everything else. And so we needed a pretty good sum of money to catch back up on our payments
Right.
there.
So then during this week of prayer, like we were looking at the fact that we needed to make sure and get all of this paid and
Hmm.
all of this cleaned up before we could ever leave Iowa.
Yep.
Because at this point, you're feeling called to close down Gonski Electric.
Yep.
And so what happens when you close down a business? You're not amping up new business,
Yeah.
right? And so you're not amping up revenue to go put towards a supplier
Yep.
bill. So at this point, we're like, okay, Lord, if you want us to go, show us a confirmation in this, in
Hmm.
that we need $11,000 to make everything current. Show us this $11,000 by our deadline, which was in, I don't know, like 2 weeks or something.
Yep.
So that we know for sure. And we told nobody
Nobody.
about this. We're like, this is between us and God. And it's funny because like we know God can do all things,
Hmm.
right? And so we're sitting here like, oh, that's a lot of money in just a
Hmm.
short period of time. But like our God is bigger and can do anything. And if he doesn't, then we're going to know like it's not
Yep.
Michigan. And that's okay with us too.
Hmm.
And we're going to keep working hard and doing what God's called us to do. And so, you guys,
1 week.
in 6 days, above our living expenses, because it needed to be above what we needed
Yep.
for mortgage and food
All
and
that.
all of those things. In 6 days we had $10,900 above our living expenses
Yep.
to go towards this payment. And the last hundred just filtered in right after that. And so it wasn't even like God waited up to the last second to bring that in. It was like God was so faithful immediately. And I remember when we were praying
It's like,
about this.
I see your week of prayer and I raise you one.
When we were praying about this, I remember we're like, okay, what if God doesn't bring this money
Mhm.
in this week and we're going to be okay with it? But I didn't want to sit for those like 2 weeks and be like nail biting, like, okay, you didn't bring it in yet. You didn't bring it in yet. And so what we did is we prayed and we're like, we're going to be at complete peace, whether he brings it in or whether he doesn't bring it in. And we're just going to walk faithfully in whatever that is. So that was another huge
Yep.
confirmation, huge confirmation
And a huge blessing to
and
be.
a huge blessing. Yeah, yeah. So, needless to say, after all of those things, it just kept getting confirmed.
Yep.
And I have to throw in a little testimony to this because I think this is so powerful. And I want to speak to moms on this. And um, because this is just, we said earlier in there how like sanctification is an ongoing process. And God continually shows things to me in my life that need to be changed and renewed. And God did that for me in this week too. So between the different groups that we run and attend, we're very busy. And so in the evenings already, you're gone on Tuesday nights for a
A
group,
group
and
on
then
the
you host a
Wednesday
men's group on
nights.
Wednesday nights. And after we learned about this position for the male advocacy position, you were going to have to be gone a third night in
Hmm.
a row. And, we have 7 kids, and dinner and bedtime is an exciting and wild time, right? And it's incredible, but it is busy. And,
Yep.
it's also a
Can be
tiring job.
hard.
Like parenting is an amazing and tiring job.
Yep.
And so, anyways, after two particularly challenging nights in a row, this was, I think, the week before you got the call to Michigan. Um, it was just two really challenging nights. And I just remember being so exhausted by the time I put the kids to bed, waiting for you to go to bed. And I just remember thinking, like, oh, I've got to talk to you about something that can maybe change. And I was like, I don't even know what it can be. I'm not going to tell you not to host men's group or do any of that anymore. I was like, I'm just so tired. This is really a challenging thing for me to do, week after week, days
Hmm.
in a row. And I had this plan when you came home from men's group. I was like, I'm going to sit down, have a meeting with him about like what can we do to make this simpler for both of us. And so I just gotten the kids to bed like minutes shy of you getting home from men's group. And I was like, I'm going to sit down and read my Bible for the first time today. And in my Bible, they have these quotes from people, wise believers before. And I had it open. I was reading in Colossians. My husband gets home and I'm putting on the brave face. I'm like, how is your men's group? And he's starting to tell me about it. And if I'm being totally honest, I think I was half listening because I was prepared to be like, okay, so I need to tell you about what's going on in our house. And I am literally opening my mouth to start talking to you about like how can we start having you home more in the evenings. And I looked down at this quote and I will never forget what it said. It said, your husband will never truly be yours until you give him back to God to walk in the calling he was made to walk in. I was like, all right, God, I guess we're not talking to him about it tonight. But the beautiful thing about that was that this was like a week before we you found out about this position where you were going to start volunteering here because there's a local one here and then the big one in Michigan, and it was going to be another night of the week. And I
Yep.
remember that week that you come home, you were like, hey, if I take this position, I'm going to be gone a third night of the week
Mhm.
in a row. Like, how are you going to feel about that? And I just felt so prepared. And, the Lord does not just care about these big aspects of our life. He cares about like these little moments. Like God
Yep.
cares about me and my heart and what I needed. And having that perspective is like, God's not only going to equip you to walk in your calling, but God can equip and strengthen me in a couple more nights in a row where I'm
Yep.
going to be doing solo dinner and bedtime. And um, I wrote actually 2 full pages down of all of the things that God did that called us to Michigan that
Yep.
week. And it would take a very long time to tell all of them. But those are the major highlights. And we will be Michigan bound in just a few months
Yeah.
and starting new, not actually knowing for sure what we're doing or where we're living, but just knowing a firm calling has
Yep.
been placed on our lives and we're ready to walk in it.
That's right. And then, so I called Mike, that was the guy's name. I called him the next day and I was talking to him about this position and told him that I was planning to move, in a few months. And would that work? And he said he'd love to have me. And he said, and by the way, the largest standalone fatherhood center in America is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he goes, and I know the director there. And if you'd like, I can set you up a meeting.
And we're sitting here kind of like with our socks knocked off, right?
Yeah.
Because at this point, um, that was like midweek. Okay, so earlier in the week, we were just both spending not only time together in prayer, but like separately in prayer. God,
Yep.
whatever your will is, it could be here, it could be anywhere. Like we could stay right here. Whatever you want us to do, God, like to you be the glory. And there was a bunch of other small things that were happening that week, and funny little things that would just
Mhm.
reaffirm Michigan, and also reconfirm like that Glorify was closing and
Yep.
that it was the right decision to let go of our employee. But the other big thing we were praying about, do you want to touch too, is the money we had prayed about. So some details for the podcast. We're going
Yes.
on when we're going to film. So
We're going to put out a video every 2 weeks.
yeah, don't say try.
No, we're going to.
You
This
plan to succeed or you can plan to fail.
every 2 weeks and on Mondays.
Yeah.
Mondays.
Yeah, Mondays are when the episodes are going to air. And we have currently 33 episode topics planned,
Yes.
and we're very excited about them. So, we're
Yes.
going to give you like a little sneak peek to what some of those are and just what you can be expecting in the next several weeks and months. Just a taste, though, because we're very excited about that. So,
Well, why don't you tell them the names of those, and then I'll pray for the end.
awesome. Okay, so some of the things you can expect in the next few weeks would be things like how can a good God let all of this stuff happen in our world today? What is biblical marriage and how can you submit to an ungodly husband, which is a really tough one, and something I'm very excited to dive into. Parenting with purpose, which is something we are incredibly passionate
Yeah.
about, something the Lord has really, really worked on us in our lives. And
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like God has just blessed us with so many wonderful people in our lives, and we've just learned a lot
Yes, we
in the
have.
last several years. So, and things like forgiveness, which I personally believe is is what separates us from the secular world, like we as Christians.
Yeah.
Not only are we forgiven, but when we walk in opposition to the fleshly desire to hold on to bitterness and we give forgiveness in grace, like that changes. I mean, that changes people. So,
Yeah. And not only does your forgiveness in Christ free you from sin, but you forgiving someone else frees you from being bound to that person in that.
amen. Yeah. So, we did like just a miniature podcast there to
Boom. Sum that one up next on the list.
So, anyways, we're very excited for those
Yes.
topics. And we just want to thank you for being here and just thank you for all the lovely people that are praying for us in our lives
Yes.
and our next adventure. And as we are traveling to Michigan and God's revealing us the plan, we're excited to be podcasting about that and telling you what's going on. So,
Yeah. And we ask you to pray for us as well.
yeah, definitely. So,
Uh,
with that, would you pray for us?
yeah. Dear God, thank you for this wonderful, wonderful time we've had to just sit here and talk. And God, we hope that someone got something out of this, that they can go out and glorify you
Yes,
and to
Lord.
follow you wherever they're called, God. We just pray that you continue to help us and guide us as we move forward, moving to Michigan, and just show us the way. We love you and thank you for everything.